Hello, Janice.
Hello, Anthony.
Are you excited?
I am.
This is going to
Yes.
be the first in three parts where we talk about Janice and her virtual paralegal business. Today's episode will be how Janice started her virtual paralegal business. So, if ever, now is really the time to learn how to start your own work from home business, just with everything going on in the economy and this and that. So, today in part one, Janice will share how she started virtual paralegal and administrative services and what steps you might take to get started with your own business. So, today I'll ask Janice about what exactly is a virtual paralegal, how do you become a virtual paralegal, how to start a virtual paralegal business, and where to find clients for that type of business. All right. But first, Janice, let's start off with you. I know you and I have chatted on a lot of these podcasts, but let's just give an intro about who you are, your background, especially about your business, please.
Absolutely. So who am I? I am a Pennsylvania-based paralegal, and I own and run Virtual Paralegal and Administrative Services, LLC, and have been doing so since 2015. I'll dig into that a little bit more in a minute.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So for anyone who doesn't know, let's just start off with the basics. What exactly is a virtual paralegal? And it seems like there's two parts to that, like the virtual part and the paralegal part.
So a paralegal in and of itself is a person that's qualified by education or training or work experience. They work or retained by a lawyer, law office, and they provide substantive legal work under the direction of a lawyer. So I'm like the nurse to the doctor is a good equivalent for
Oh,
that.
very good.
But the second part of that is the virtual paralegal. And honestly, it's the same exact type of work. It's just done off site. That's the only difference really that makes it virtual. Same quality of work, same type of work, just not sitting next to the person that you are working for.
So when you say offsite, does that necessarily mean work from home, or do you have colleagues, or do you have office space anywhere?
So I personally have my own office, which happens to be in my home, but you can do this from anywhere.
So, obviously I work with you, but from your experience dealing with other attorneys, why do attorneys like this? Why do attorneys prefer a virtual paralegal versus an on-site paralegal?
Very simply put, it comes down to funds. It's significantly cheaper to hire a virtual paralegal than it is to have somebody in-house. And again, I can break that down here shortly.
Okay, very good. Okay, so you mentioned, a paralegal to a lawyer is as to a nurse to a doctor. I think I messed up the analogy phrasing there.
Yeah.
But a lot of people ask, how do you become a virtual paralegal? Is there formal education or certification requirements, for example?
So, in Pennsylvania specifically, you actually do not need any sort of specific, certifications to be a paralegal. It's based on training, experience, knowledge, everything as a whole to become a paralegal. I didn't wake up one morning and become one, but in my particular situation, I became one through experience. There are paralegal programs, there are paralegal schools, and there are paralegal certificates. I just went a different route.
Well, two questions.
Yes.
Would you recommend a certificate or education for somebody starting out? And then please tell us more about how you specifically developed your experience.
So I definitely would suggest some sort of education. I think it's a really great foundation to doing this. It's definitely not a substitute for experience because you have to get out there and you have to do it. But I do think education is really important, whether that's taking classes at the community college or taking an online program or certification. But I think it's important you get the basics. Like anything, you're going to get the building blocks to move forward with this. I personally I do have a degree. It's in criminology and sociology. So not really the same, but I do have a degree. I do have a form of education. I got started on accident, which is probably my favorite story of all of this. Most of my world before the paralegal world was in the law enforcement world, law enforcement administration. So I worked in police dispatching and working at a police department. So I kind of morphed into this paralegal role. Like I said, on accident. I am. Let's see. Back in 2007, I was wonderfully going through a divorce. Right? Everybody, it happens. But when I was there, I was so prepared. When I walked into one of my meetings, I had all of my ducks in a row. I didn't know what I was doing. They don't write online how to prepare for your own, custody conciliation. So I show up, I have binders and I have sheets and I have graphs and charts, and I look like I'm ready for a full-fledged homicide trial. And my attorney looks at me and says, do you need a job? And I said, well, yeah, I really do. And from there, while I was still working for the police departments in the evenings and on the weekends, I started to learn the paralegal world. Just from that. Yeah.
Were you assisting your attorney virtually or in his office? Curious.
Virtually. So I started out virtually because I was working full time at the police department. Everything that I did was all virtual for him. A lot of my case, if you're going to mess up on a case, you might as well make it yours. And I did. I messed up quite often, but that's the way to learn. So I was working for him virtually. And I did that from about 2007 to 2014. In 2014, my career was ended at the police department, and I thought, you know what? I had learned over the course of 2007 to 2014 that there were so many attorneys out there that needed help, but as needed. Not full-time somebody sitting in their office, but they still needed a little bit of help. And so from there, the one attorney told another attorney. So told another attorney who told another attorney. And I had to tell people, look, I'm really sorry I work full time at the police department. I just can't take on another attorney. Mm-hmm. But the minute 2014 came around and I said, okay, I'm free, that's when it all really began. I saw the need, and it was overwhelming. People needed help. So in 2015, in January, became an official business, an LLC, and literally jumped in. But that's how it all started. There's so many different routes you can take to get to this spot. Like I said, whether it's education or experience, but I spent 7 years, nights and weekends, figuring it out, Googling, reading, doing everything I could to learn it.
How much did your attorney support you, or how much of it was you just sort of getting thrown in the water and figuring it out?
I am so blessed to have had an attorney who was very helpful. He was very knowledgeable. He was a district judge at one point. So he had a lot of knowledge, and he didn't let me flounder. So I would give something a shot, and he would give me some really good feedback or show me how to do it. And he was very helpful. Actually, I still do work for him. It's been a long, 13 years. I still work for him, and I still learn. You learn something new every day, but no, he was very helpful and guided me through the process. And during that time, I did work for other people as well. There was another gentleman in his office who had experience in a different type of law. So I started to learn from him.
Hold on a second. On that example, when this attorney from a different area of law asked you to help, you had zero experience in that new area of law, correct? Zero.
Nothing.
And was that a problem, or how did that?
No. Yeah. So here's how I tell everyone, and I suggest that this is what they do. Be honest. You just say, I don't know how to do this. And I did. I said, I don't know how to do estates and trust, but I'd love to learn. Mm-hmm. And I learned. And I started at the beginning, and I went all the way through, my first probate. It was challenging, as we both know how probate is. But along the way, you ask questions and you learn, and you mess up. And you say you mess up, and then you just keep learning.
Here's a question that I think will be enlightening for anyone who's thinking about starting. Has any attorney encouraged you or asked you to take a certification course?
No. And actually, interestingly enough, no one's ever asked what my background is. I do have it placed on my website, but no, I think it all comes from how your work production. Mm-hmm. Even if you say you know how to do something and you really don't, it's going to show.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to know.
So you are the Kim Kardashian of paralegals. Do you know?
Yes,
do you know Kim Kardashian's story?
I do. I just have a little less money.
Well, did you know she never went to law school, but based on her experience, her real world experience helping getting these folks out of jail who were, wrongly incarcerated. She was able to, just based on experience, qualify to sit for the probably California bar exam. And she's now an attorney. So yeah, you don't need to sit in a classroom.
You don't, no. And I do have acronyms now after my name from certifications from the paralegal organizations. And I did sit for those tests because of my experience, because I had a degree in one field and I did have experience, paralegal experience in the real world. So it's the same concept.
Very true, Kim. All right, let's move on to how to start. These are like the nuts and bolts of how to start a virtual paralegal business. So this is probably similar to almost any business, whether you're starting a law practice or any service-based business, or a real estate brokerage or life insurance agent. But let's talk about startup needs. And I'm going to tick off the categories first, and then we'll jump into the first one. But
absolutely,
I like to talk about how much money you needed to get started, what equipment you needed to get started, and what kind of physical space you needed to get started, and anything else you can think of. So let's start with money. How much money do you need to start your own virtual paralegal business?
You have to factor in what you need to set up. For example, you must have a computer, and you have to have a good computer. You can't use a laptop that's 6 years old that barely works. You have to factor in that you are setting up an office, wherever that is. We'll get into that, but you have to set up an account for that. You also have to set up, like I just said earlier, I wanted a certification because I wanted to have the acronym behind my name, have a little extra experience. So you have to factor in training and education. So you do have to sit down, you make your list of what you need, maybe not that first day, but within that first month, and factor it in. And this is what you need. So for money, I would say a couple of $1,000s, right? Would that be realistic if you get, your monitor, your computer, different things like that? But you have to have it.
I mean, is it okay? So yeah, like a decent computer is probably at least $1,000 or so, right?
Well, yeah, I think I got mine for quite less. But when it comes to computers, here's a tip, professional tip: 2 monitors, right? So I don't know if you use 2 monitors, but when you're a paralegal, you're looking at interrogatories on one page and you're answering on another page and you're doing something else. 2 monitors is life-saving. So you definitely want to add in an extra, $100 for that second monitor. It's going to make your life a lot easier.
What else? So monitors, laptop, what other equipment is like bare bones? You need this to even think about getting started.
So, and I wish somebody would have told me all of this in the beginning, because I didn't learn all this until maybe 6 months into it, that, wow, I really needed this to start. Another thing that sounds silly, postage, like a postage meter with a scale. I was running to the post office every few days to get stamps, to measure things, to weigh things, to send it. And I realized, wow, this is kind of a waste of my time and resources. As soon as I got the software and the scale, I didn't leave the house. My office, it was fantastic. So that's another thing that I wish I would have known originally, would be like a postage meter type service.
So and if you're virtual, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and with that, you'd need like a really good printer scanner. Yes. Even though you're virtual.
Do you have a combo, or do you have a high speed feeding scanner? I had to get into these details. But,
yeah. See, actually, I do have a couple of attorneys, one who we're speaking with, who likes things scanned in. And especially if you get really big, like thick scans, I have a standalone scanner. Again, wish I would have known this. I didn't know it till 2 years after, but it shaved off hours. Have you ever seen something slowly go through the scanner?
Yeah.
Nope, not now. So again, you have to think of what's going to cut down your time, because you don't want to be sitting there scanning. You want to be doing other things.
What about communications? Let's talk about, can you work off your cell phone, or is it important to get a phone line in the beginning?
In the beginning. So I think, a landline. I don't use it. I use my cell phone for everything. Everything. As far as communication wise, because you're able to block your number, you're able to put apps on your phone that come up as a different number. There's so many ways around it. I don't think investing in a home phone or a landline office phone is a necessity. Not at all.
What about mail? Do you think a PO box or a virtual office is necessary, or do you just have mail come to your house?
So I I like to have a little bit of anonymity. Wow, that was a hard one. That word. So I went with a PO box. I thought it was a little better. I didn't want to send things to my home because I do get things for clients and their clients, and so I used the PO box to keep it separate. Although our FedEx and our UPS drivers, they do know us very well because I think they deliver here almost every day. But everything usually goes to the PO box. But definitely a good investment.
So what about physical space? You have a work at home setup. So can you talk about that? And maybe if you've ever heard of any other alternatives to that, I'd love to hear about those.
So I do know of a few virtual paralegal businesses who do have their own office. They have an office quarters with people that come into work. But the premise behind what I do is to cut down overhead, to cut down on the overall cost of running a business. So you have to factor in, can you make enough to cover an office building? You know, you could get one for a few $100s, but we both know in Manhattan, do you think you could get anything except for like a small something for, quite a few $1,000s? So you have to think about that. But physical space, really, it's important to make it your space where you are. I started out in the kitchen, at the table, and that didn't work for me. I started out in the corner of the bedroom, went in there and I made the office. That didn't work. You need to just find your space wherever that is. Now, I'm blessed now. I have an actual office with a door. It's completely separate from the home. So it's an office. When I step in here, I'm at work. But it's very important to find your space wherever that is.
I think a lot of people are discovering that these past few weeks.
Yes.
Working from home.
Yeah. It sounds glorious, like, I'm going to work from home, lay in the bed with my pajamas and on the laptop. But it doesn't work that way. You're not mentally present. You have to be at work, but not at work.
Okay, let's jump into where to find clients. You already shared, thankfully, your experience with, how you sort of, your own attorney was your first client and how it kind of grew organically from there. But if you were starting from scratch and you didn't have that opportunity, how would you do it? And what would you do? How would you invite others to get started? Would you, would you go into the gig boards? Would you, what else would you do?
So you can, but I would say that even though if you don't have those initial connections, word of mouth is the best. Whether that's if you're on Facebook and you know of someone, talk to people, ask people. A lot of attorneys do not know that this is even an option. So if you have a friend who's one and you can explain to them, this is what I do. Do you have anyone that can benefit from the services? And I say word of mouth because I did try the postcards and the letters and the calls and the direct mailings with zero production. And I'm telling you, I probably sent out hundreds. I threw everything at the wall to see what would stick, but everything came from word of mouth, having a great online presence with a clean website that shows what you do. That's very important too. If you are going to make a business, you have to have a website. You have to, again, online, LinkedIn. You had said about gig boards, and those are fine. I see a lot of people using them now. You will, I find that like with, what's the one you like Fiverr and things like that. I find that you can do them, but you will be grossly underpaid.
Yeah.
I mean, and what I mean, like pennies on the dollar to what you're worth. And you need to, I go back to, know your worth. If you know what you can make, you may want to just stay off of there. Because once you get in with a client and you're charging them, I'm making it at $5 an hour, it's going to be really hard to stay with that client for the next, 3, 4, 5 years. And then give them your real rate at what point,
You've anchored yourself to a low rate. Yeah.
You have. So I'm not a big fan of those. I personally have not used them. But that again, you get out there, you talk to people. It's all about that communication, whether it's face to face or meeting people online or through friends.
Very good. We'll touch more on how to expand in the next part. Janice, thank you for sharing on this part.
Thank you.
The best way to learn more about you is to visit your website, virtualparalegalpa.com, correct?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Links to my social media, and I do write some blogs that go a little bit deeper into some of this stuff.
Very good. So make sure to tune in for the next episode, part 2, where Janice will talk about how she has grown her virtual paralegal business. Until then, thank you, Janice. Thanks for listening. We'll talk next time.
Thanks for having me.
Bye now.